welcome.
Susan, how are you?
I'm really good, thank you, but I am noticing it's becoming quite autumnal, isn't it? Round here it certainly is, with darker mornings, darker evenings. The leaves are falling, so we're really starting to notice that it's autumn now, aren't we?
Oh, that's come quick, isn't it?
It has come very quickly, yes, for sure.
What we want to talk about today, then?
We're going to talk about how important it is that if you're working with other people, if you have a boss, actually it even can apply in families too, actually, but particularly if you have a boss, you don't necessarily want that boss to be your friend. It's great to have a friendly atmosphere, to have a amiable atmosphere, to have a cohesive, cooperative atmosphere, particularly if you're working in service industry or hospitality or something. You need to have friendliness there. But I think the danger of overplaying that we're all good pals together can be quite a problem thing to do. And I see that sometimes in families too, where you get parents saying, the mum will say, oh, my daughter's my best friend, or my son and I were mates. Well, it's good to be friendly, it's good to share, but sometimes oversharing can overcomplicate things and change the dynamics of the role. And often kiddies want a parent, staff want a boss, they want some guidance, they don't want somebody who's always angling to go out for drinks and be a pal and all that kind of thing. So that's what we're talking about today, the importance of having boundaries or defining your relationships where you're friendly but not over friendly.
Yeah, I actually picked this because when I had my own business, I had a friend. Well, I had to employ somebody and got friendly with them. And in the end, it just got a lot of bother. And that's what it's like, really, isn't it?
Well, it can be if you don't pick up on it soon enough. There can be subtle clues that the relationship's changing, and we may feel a little bit uneasy and this isn't quite right. The 5-10 minutes late every morning, or they're taking a bit too long for lunch, and they're not coming back on time, or they're saying, is it okay if I leave a bit early today because of...
Yeah.
And you can have all those situations where if you're sort of mates, you think, oh, yeah, it's okay, do it. But it can almost become accepted that that's the way things are. I come and go as I please, or, I can't finish this piece of work because, or I can't do it, or somebody else does it. Now, if you've got more than one member of staff, that can cause problems because one person may seem to be the favourite.
Yeah.
But if you're in a team, if it's just you and your co-worker and they're an employee and it's getting like that, then you end up almost doing their work for them and it's not the right environment. And I also think that this, as I said before, this can sometimes happen in families too, where I've known mums or dads be oversharing far too much personal stuff about perhaps the relationship with the other parent or things that are going on in their lives. And the child, even if there are older children, can become quite worried or concerned or, uneasy about what's actually going on there. And I think sometimes subtle boundaries make all the difference.
Definitely. The trouble is, the person I took on, in the end, it would be a lot of money.
Okay.
And it was
again, that's something you have to watch out for. I mean, the truth is, if we're loaning somebody money or we're helping somebody out or we're subbing them the wages in advance, the problem with that can be, again, that almost becomes, we can almost feel obligated that we have to do this. And it's a difficult thing where clawing back a little bit of status, clawing back a little bit of authority can be quite tough to do that. So it's having those boundaries in place where we say, and we've talked before about saying no in a positive way, saying, instead of saying I'm sorry I can't or no I can't, sometimes we have to find more subtle ways of doing it where we say I'm afraid that's not possible at the minute, or I'm not in a position where I can do that for you. And they're great ways of saying no, but not in a bolshy or aggressive way, but sometimes reinstating the boundaries and pulling it back so that we are reminding people that actually, hang on a minute, I'm the person who's taking all the responsibility. I'm the one who's covering all the overheads. I'm the one who's having to find the work. It's my business. You're getting paid whatever happens. I'm the one who has to prop this business up, and you have a job because of me. So yeah, we might be pals, we might go for a drink outside, we might go for a game of golf outside of work, but at the minute while you're here, this has to be done. And I know countless people who I've perhaps had as clients or I met at networking meetings who, when they're tiny businesses and they've taken on 1 or 2 apprentices, it can be quite tough to get that dynamic right, that authority right, where we don't just stop on the way home for a quick coffee or a beer, or sit in the van and we're chatting about problems perhaps in our personal lives and oversharing. It's tempting to do that if we're feeling in a bad place and we're spending a lot of time together, but we have to remember, once we've put stuff out there, we can't claw it back, and it's a bit difficult.
How can we keep that distance without upsetting people?
Well, I think it's. I mean, I always say start as you mean to go on. So start as you mean to go on, and be friendly, but don't overshare. I mean, I know, for example, some people in slightly larger companies where perhaps they've got a team of staff, they will go for drinks with their team, put some money behind the bar, and leave after a couple of hours. So they're friendly, they're being supportive, but they're not staying till the party antics get going. You know, they're staying for a couple of hours. They're not going to get bevied up and be crawling home, stopping for a curry or kebabs on the way back. You know, so they're being friendly, but they're not being over friendly. They're finding ways to be supportive. I think also things like having structures in place where you perhaps remind people that you're in charge. So you may perhaps, depending on, again, how big your team is, you may have regular appraisals. So you're sat behind a desk, or you're waiting for somebody who has to come into the office, and they sit down and you've got a form and you're filling in and asking them about their aspirations, asking them what's going on, how they're feeling, what their gripes are, what the grievances are. So you're keeping channels of communication open, but you're reminding them subtly, without saying, oh, I'm the boss, you do as I say. You're reminding them subtly of the dynamics of who's in charge and who the roles are. So things like that are ways of keeping that structure in place, because at the end of the day, if money's not earned and people aren't doing their jobs and people aren't performing to standard, you're not going to have that work. Your company's not going to survive. So you have to keep that at the back of your mind, that the buck stops with you if you're running a team or a small business.
People do take advantage of, don't they?
Well, they can do, but again, as I say, you have to kind of look out for the warning signs and realise, hang on a minute, this is getting a bit dodgy here, you know, this is getting a bit fraught, and if somebody's uncooperative or they're starting to be difficult, then you have to sort of step back and not take it personally. If they're begrudging you your seniority, or they wanted that job themselves, or they don't think you deserve it, or there's an undercurrent, sometimes, again, we have to step back and say, this is not necessarily about me, and even if it is tough, but we're going to have to get this thing in place. And I think sometimes it's if people are struggling, then we have to perhaps find out why they're struggling. If they're being a bit hostile, maybe try and find out what's going on. Have they got problems at home? Are they struggling with the work? Are they overstressed? Have they got health-related issues that they're running around after with a child or an elderly parent? Find out what's going on. Sometimes there's other stuff that people perhaps don't want to divulge, and keeping good channels of communication open enables people to share with you, to let them know if they've got problems. But again, you're in a position of seniority where you can say, okay, this is how we're going to tackle this. Thank you for letting me know.
Yeah. Trouble is, when you've got a group of lads together, say, the lads, they work together, they're beers together, what you say. how can we kind of like get away from all that? It's difficult because you don't, just now I'm thinking about art and everything. But do you think it's for the relationship and the work?
I think it sets in place a different relationship because you have to decide if you want to be their pal, their mate, or if you want to be their boss. So again, at the end of the day, if you're all pals together and you're sort of going, let's bunk off on a Friday afternoon, it's 2:00, or it's okay, we've had a heavy night, oh, come on guys, we'll be in later tomorrow morning, you're losing your sense of professionalism. You're losing your standards. And I think sometimes we have to perhaps try and keep, to some extent, work and play separate so that we have our people that we are friendly with away from the work environment and we're friendly enough with staff. And I mean, I remember years ago, my husband used to do a lot of entertaining with very, very high profile clients. He worked with a lot of politicians. He worked with a lot of celebrities. He ran some country clubs. And we used to go out and entertain those people. Slightly different because they weren't working for him. But when we went out entertaining and I went along as his wife, I always made sure that I was 3 drinks behind everybody else. So I wasn't matching them drink for drink. He was buying bottles of spirits and all sorts of things and putting them on the table. That's what his role was way back then. But I made sure that at the back of my mind, this is work. And he was the same. So I think when you're in work mode or you're in party mode, they're 2 very different things. And I think reminding yourself, these people are working for me. I'm footing the bill. If these people aren't fit to work tomorrow, or if they're not in the right frame of mind because we've corrupted the relationship by playing too much together, got to rein that in a little bit and keep an eye on the prize, keep an eye on the goal, so that yes, you can have a Christmas party, but like I say, you throw some money behind the bar. You say, right, the next couple of rounds are on me. Oh, look at the time, I've got to go now. I've got a prior engagement. I've got to be up early in the morning, or I've got something else to do, or whatever, so that people know that you're friendly, but you're not over friendly. And I think that is key to it, really, because otherwise you really are setting up problems for future when, as I say, if somebody has to start asking for permission to go off early, or they start coming in late, or they can't do the job, or they have good reasons why they can't do the job, that you're in a position where you can step in and say, look, we need to address this. This isn't working. We have to sort something out. What's going on? And you have to be in a position where, if need be, if you're running the show, you've got this apprentice, or you're trying to get your business going and growing, you have to be in a position where you can step up and deal with things, nip them in the bud, and you're not quaking in your boots and lying awake at night fretting about how you're going to handle it.
Again, isn't it?
Pardon?
For some, it's difficult, isn't it?
Well, I if you started to mean to go on, it's not as difficult. But this whole thing about, I want everybody to like me, I want to be popular, I want people to think I'm a nice person. They can still think you're a nice person without being a soft touch or seeming to favour one person. I mean, we all remember the school teacher. Most people, if you ask them which school teacher they remember with most affection, it's probably the one who was fair but firm. It's probably the one who talked to you and brought you into line. And I think that applies equally with a boss. It applies equally with a parent. There are many roles where people can mentor and nurture us, but they have to keep an eye on that, on the parameters of the relationship, and rather than just always trying to be everybody's friend and Mr. Nice Guy, because Mr. Nice Guy don't pay the bills. It's about being that person in place who is there to teach, who is there to nurture, who is there to mentor and help people to grow.
So how do we get around it to be more tougher?
Well, I think a big part of that is practicing good self-care. I think when we practice good self-care, we remind ourselves this is important. So we're looking after ourselves. We're making sure, first of all, we're feeling healthy and fit. So eating, sleeping, keeping an eye on how much alcohol you drink, exercising, having good interests away from work. So you may be doing your outdoor activities, your walks, your golf, whatever it is, your hikes and things. You have a good setup at home, perhaps, or with your friends where you can talk and share and talk things through. Maybe linking in with a good networking group where you can sometimes find there are opportunities in networking groups to share issues. So you might be able to say, how does anybody else handle this? And you may find you get support from people who say, oh, I've got that problem too. I'm a small business. I've just taken on my first apprentice or two or whatever, and I'm finding it difficult. So sharing and getting good support networks around you away from the work environment. And then when you're in your work environment, you're not all consumed about this being the only world you have. It's important, but at the same time, this is my business. This is not my staff's business. This is not my team's business. I'm in charge. I'm the guy who has to meet the deadlines, meet the targets, pay the bills, whatever your role is, and holding on to that and being clear about that. Because if you're the person in charge, you're in a very different place than the other people in the team, and it's reminding yourself of that. So you have fun and nice things away from home with the special people in your life, but you're not looking to your co-workers as being your pals or the only orbit that you have.
Yeah. So what would you say to people now listening about being pally with their mate and how can they keep distance?
Well, I think you're the person who sets the agenda. So you perhaps have in place a structure where you remind people of your role. So you may have regular staff meetings, but you call them, you set the agenda. You maybe ask around if people have things they want to talk about, but you set the agenda. You're the person in charge. You chair those meetings. You're subtly, regularly reminding people that of your position. You're being fair. You're doing staff appraisals. You're keeping perhaps an open door policy where people can come and talk to you if they have concerns. You're looking after yourself, but you're also reminding people that you're in charge. So you start as you mean to go on. You are clear about timings and free time and breaks and whatever it might be, that people are all feeling that they're dealt with fairly. Because people notice if somebody keeps sloping in 10 minutes late every day and nothing's said, or sloping off every evening because they've got childcare issues or whatever it might be, if that's a special arrangement that they've got, other people can feel aggrieved about that. So being clear about what's actually going on and being firm that these are things that it's a private matter or whatever it is, but you're firm, you're fair, and people will respect that. And I think, again, that whole thing about making sure that people know what your role is, making sure that people know where they stand, making sure that everybody feels they're being dealt with fairly. All these things help to make a difference and then make a team where everybody feels good. There's a friendly atmosphere, but you're not losing your power to control or to drive or to manage, which is your responsibility at the end of the day.
Certainly is, isn't it? Thank you very much, Susan.
Our pleasure.
In my especially when you're a boss, you do have to say it as it is. You just can't be friends. It's your business. And it's your life. Yes, be friendly, but be a boss. Be a leader. See you later.